The first big challenge of the Karaman Begs had arrived in the form of the Armenians of Cilicia, who had aspirations for the western regions that Nevsehir claimed. Although only small skirmish had occurred between both factions, this conflict would result in the escalation of warfare in the entire region, bringing several parties into the fray. The year was 1322 of Yeshua, and the Karaman ever expanded their influence, with their merchants and diplomats traversing the Anatolian plateaus, bringing new reaches and treaties into the hands of Nevsehir Beg. Several small rebellions were arousing in the Karaman lands, but these were of small importance, and small bags of coin would suffice in bringing the peasants down. Bedreddin, by this time, had gathered a small Turkoman host to raid the Armenian and Alaye lands. The Grecian forces had no way to intercept the fast Karaman horses, and the Armenians were too far away to support them. So they stayed inside the walls, hoping for wariness and anger to drive the Muslims back to their lands. But on spring of 1322, Bedreddin made a full-out assault with his Turkoman horsemen. Unbeknownst to the defenders, Karaman agents had entered in the castle and opened the gates for the invaders to come inside with impunity. Hails of arrows flied over Alaye, with its people being slaughtered by their sharpness. All type of defense against the Karaman were pointless, for without their strong walls, they were sitting targets for the keen marksmen. Bedreddin put most of the population to the sword, allowing his Turkomans to have their way with the settlement. His name was acclaimed throughout the Muslim world for his victory over the infidels. But in the Karaman Beylik, his brothers were more apprehensive, fearing his influence over their houses. Alaeddin's son once again set out to the Atlas Mountains with a bigger host, hoping to defeat the Cilician frontiersmen and leave a gap in their defenses for an open-out season for raids in the Armenian lands. In the north, the Ahi Brotherhood expanded to Beypazan, leaving them in conflict with the Ottoman Beks over the region. The Anatolian principalities were ever more aggressive and their ambitions grander. Yaxihan closely watched this set of events and began to prepare his dynasty to endure the future hardships they would encounter. A key step to ensure their prosperity was to secure the western border, which why the Karamans entered in an alliance with the Hamid Tekebeks. Now, the Ottomans showed their aggression to Simnisan on the border of the Karaman lands, which worried Yaxihan. He sent word to the Hamid Tekebeks to make a move over the settlement, giving them large sums of money to sponsor the expedition, for he didn't trust the Ottoman Beks, for he saw their unique aggressiveness and expansion to be against his own ideals of dominion over the peninsula. He himself could not embark on such conquest at the moment, for he had many rebellions springing in his territories, riled up by the treacherous Yahya Karatai, who dwelt in Karaman lands in the east. As for the south, the Armenian noble Hoshin of Korikos was the orchestrator of their expansion west to Silivka, where he made his base for future campaigns against the Karamans, hoping to capture the western Christian lands of Alaye, who begged for help against the Muslims. Hoshin's head had a price on his head, and Bedreddin sent an assassin to take care of the Armenian general. But the attempt failed, and the assassin was executed. It seemed that the Armenian wouldn't be so easily dislodged from the region. In Larenda, Burhanuddin was having troubles with new rebel forces in his lands, where he sent cavalry units against the rebels, hoping they would storm them, but they were defeated. Then he sent another force, and yet again they were crushed by the rebels. Their victories gave them huge morale boost to the rebels, and again a mockery out of Burhanuddin. In Aksaray, a minor peasant uprising sprung up, but the Tatar mercenaries made good work out of them, quickly defeating them all. Ali, reaching the mountain passes, came across the army that he faced years back, but its general wasn't there, Sempa de Thumidia. Nevertheless, Ali sieged the fortress, hoping to use it as a base for future campaigns against the Cilicians. By next year, Bedreddin began to build in Alaye stables of war for his horsemen to train and replenish their steeds for future wars against the Christians. While Ali approached by a larger host, controlled by the new frontiersman, Grigor Ethumedian, leaving him no choice but to retreat back to Aksaray. Along the way, he passed across the lands of Nevsehir, where he found an empty fortress, occupying it for his raids against the Armenians. But because he slowed his pace and allowed himself to rest on the fortress, Grigor Ethumedian passed the border regions and sieged Ali in Nevsehir. Grigor called upon Sempad Ethumedian and his garrison force to combine their hosts to make the attack upon the Karamans, making their army too vast to be contended. Ali sent a desperate message to his father to relieve the siege in Nevsehir, which Alaeddin began to set forth to. He, however, had no force readily available to battle with, so he ran to the service of a mercenary army to accompany him against the Armenian frontiersmen. The mercenary army did not directly engage with the Cilician army, only skirmishing with their vanguard with their horse archers, waiting for the supporting army of Ali. Along these many charges, the former frontiersman, Sempad Ethumedian, was struck by an arrow, dying from his wounds, leaving the rest of the army being commanded by his relative, Grigor. Although the Armenian host was far stronger than the Karaman horsemen, they didn't have enough archers to counter the nimble steeds of the Karamans, which fled away when they came too close to engage, leading to many losses. When Ali arrived at the battlefield, the Armenian lines were disorganized enough for the Karaman horses to begin charging their front ranks. Grigor began to lose control of his host. The repeated charge began to toll over his warriors, and they started to retreat. Seeing the impossible position that he found himself, Grigor sounded the retreat, which was disastrous, for his foot soldiers were quickly run over by Ali and Alaeddin, making most of his men either killed or captured. Karamans had achieved a heroic victory in Nevsehir. The massive and well-trained Cilician army were completely destroyed by a nimble and smaller force, leading for an embarrassing retreat by the Armenians, leaving great glory to Alaeddin and Ali over the battlefield. The border regions now were unprotected for incoming Karaman raids and possible future conquests over the Cilician regions.